Welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian. I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here on the Pacific West Coast of Canada. I hope everybody has had a super week, and I hope that you're all looking forward to a fantastic weekend. Hi Carolina, welcome to our chat moderator. Students, this is a members chat class. Of course, everybody is welcome to watch. And in this class, we are looking at an IELTS writing Band 9 line graph for task 1 of the writing section for the academic IELTS. Okay, the general IELTS is different. So make sure that if you're sitting the general IELTS exam, you're studying task 1 for the general IELTS. Nevertheless, as far as writing practice is concerned, this is great for anyone who is planning to do work or study in English, as analyzing information, data, and explaining it, writing reports about it, requires this kind of expository essay writing in the third person voice of the author. I'll explain more about that in a bit. Just before we get into that, this lesson is presented to you by AEhelp.com for academic IELTS and for lots more help with your writing. Check us out there for the general IELTS, and for letter writing, narrative writing, definitely check us out at gieltshelp.com. On both of those websites, we have lots and lots of information to help you improve your English and your score for the IELTS exam. You just click this big red button right up there. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. So again, just click this red button right there and you get access to all of our practice materials, our exams, the apps for your mobile phone, videos, and lots more. We're world leaders when it comes to IELTS test preparation. As you can see here, we are an official IELTS test registration center, and we're certified agents. So you're in great hands with us. For the general IELTS, visit us at gieltshelp.com. Again, click this red button right there to join our premium package. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. So it doesn't cost very much, so you can use it as long as you need to in order to get your desired band scores. Welcome, Rashika. Hi, Salma, a new member. Good to see you, Salma, in the class. Hi, Arda, Calvin, Baljit, Chandra. I'm trying to remember that pronunciation you told me yesterday. Hi, June, Jyoti, Baljit. Nice to see everyone in this class as we get going. Students, our apps in your app stores, Academic IELTS Help, General IELTS Help, link the apps to your web accounts. Follow us on Instagram, IELTS_AE Help for academic and GIELTS Help for general. We separate the academic and the general because it is different purposed. So it's good to study from materials that are specific to your IELTS needs, okay? If you have questions about the exam or about English in general, or you just have a question about immigration or going to school in another country, send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. All right, students, so we will have speaking part 1 for everybody after this class, meaning that everyone will be able to join the chat. And then tomorrow we'll do speaking part 2 and speaking part 3. So lots and lots coming up in the class, okay? Now, let's get into our task 1 line graph question for the day. So you get to the writing section, okay? And my first tip is always start with task 1. Sometimes students ask, like, should I start with task 2? And my answer is no. Okay, you can, it's allowed, but you shouldn't. So always start with task 1. Members, do you know why? Do you know why it's a good idea to start with task 1? And this is true for the general and the academic version. And I mean, if you think about it, the IELTS people who are making the exams, they kind of make it in the order that they think it's the best to do for the candidate. So same thing in the reading section. Usually passage 1 is the best one to start with. So, you know, they're not trying to trick you. They're not trying to be like, okay, we're going to invert the writing assignments. So you should start with task 1. Baljit says it's kind of like warming up the engine of the brain for writing. Yeah, Kofum says kind of the same thing. Why? There's actually a very distinct difference between task 1 and task 2 in this case. So why is it like warming up the engine? So always start with task 1, not task 2, because let's see if somebody kind of puts their thumb on it. It's an expression meaning to identify the exact reason. Kelvin says because it's supposed to be easier. Yeah, in some sense it is, Kelvin, but again, we're stuck with the question of why, right, Arda? So why is it supposed to be easier? And the reason being, okay, that it's supposed to be easier, Baljit says we can use more English. It's not just that, but you can use more thinking, right? So always start with task 1, not task 2, because all of the information is in front of you for the essay, okay? Task 1, general, it's a little bit different because it's narrative, but still the information is more or less easier. It's not an argument essay. Arguments are opinions, arguments, task 2. It takes more thinking, and it takes better language. Just think about that in your real life, in your own language, right? When you're arguing with someone, when you're trying to make a point or giving an opinion, it's actually quite a challenging situation, aside from just language, right? To find the right words, to find the right explanations, the right supporting points. So it's more challenging, right? So it's not just a longer task, but the thinking that's required is more challenging. Okay, does that make sense, everyone? So task 1, especially in the academic IELTS, you really just have all the information in front of you that you need for that essay. So as long as you have the right strategy and as long as you've practiced, you should be able to do it fairly smoothly. Okay, does that make sense? Baljit says yes. And that's great. Okay, hence you have 20 minutes to do it, right? So it's supposed to go fairly smoothly, okay? All right, and make sure that you only spend that 20 minutes because task 2 is worth more of your mark. So that's kind of like, I guess you can think about it as task 1's like your pre-game or the pre-show, and task 2 is kind of like the main event. Okay, Jyoti Rashika says yes. By the way, just so you kind of see, I'm looking at everybody's comments here for our members, everyone. So that's where I can see what our members are doing and what they're responding. So members, you're in front of me. In fact, you're just off to my right hand here. And I'm carefully paying attention to what you're saying. Okay, so step number 1 for task 1 is to just really read the question carefully. So let's do that now. Okay, so you should spend about 20 minutes on this task. The following graph shows the percentage of student involvement in several sports in a large high school. Report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so a band 9, keep this in mind. Okay, well, let's read this. So write at least 150 words. It's at least. There's no maximum number, although you shouldn't go really overboard too much. But, you know, write minimum 150 words. Okay. Now, make sure that once you've read the question, you recall this important point. A band 9 task 1, will have 4 distinct paragraphs. Okay, 1, an introduction. 2, an overview, which is, in my opinion, should be just 1, but nobody cares about my opinion. Well, professors in university do. Overview. 3, body, which is kind of your main analyses. Okay. Plural, analyses with an E. Pay attention to that. Analysis is singular. Okay. Here you're analyzing it in multiple ways, so analyses. And then 4, and this is the one a lot of students ask me about, is the summary. So it is good to have a summary, just a 1-line summary from the line graph in this case to identify what we learned from it. We'll get to that in a bit, okay? So you should have those parts, okay? Number 1, the introduction, is quite a simple step. The introduction is simply a paraphrase of the question with added details from the graph, okay? So here we have just this sentence, really. The following graph shows the percentage of student involvement in several sports in a large high school. And probably we should say over a certain period, okay? Might not say that in the question, but if you have that, it'll give you a bit more help. So we can write the introduction here using our graph. So before you put your pen to paper or start typing if you're doing the computer-based exam, take a look at the graph, okay? When you take a look at the graph, what should you do? So how should you approach the graph? Members, what should be the direction that you approach your graph? Let's see if somebody here tells me. So when I'm looking at this graph that's behind the chat here, and I'm taking my first kind of look at it, how should I look at it? So what pattern, I think if I want to be more clear here, what pattern should my eyes follow? Okay, keep this in mind. Sometimes even I make the mistake of not doing this, and it's a really bad idea. Okay, so definitely follow this pattern when you're looking at a graph of any sort or information. Think Western culture, think literature, English language. So what's the movement, to be specific, what's the direction of the movement of my eyes on the paper or on the screen? Chandra says trends, but before I look at trends, so before I start analyzing it, what is the pattern of the movement of my eyes on the piece of paper? Baljit says highlight 4 to 5 main points. Calvin says legend, X, Y axis. There's even a simpler way to say it, and I really want to give you this simple but very valuable piece of advice. Okay, I've got some good answers coming there, but it's not what I'm thinking. When you read in English, what's your direction of movement? Your direction of movement, students, and you can see yourselves answering, which is okay. And when you say X to Y axis, it's kind of on the right path, okay? So when you're thinking about movement on the paper, okay, I'm thinking simpler than what you're thinking. I think you're overcomplicating. Yeah, there we go. So Baljit says left to, very good, Baljit. Now you're reading my mind. Baljit there, you can see, says left to right. Okay, and Arta says up and down. It's not up and down, it's top down. Okay, so in fact, to be very precise, the movement of the eye is top down, okay, left to right, okay, top down, left, right, okay. And you always want to remember that. It's simple, but we often forget this. Okay, we often kind of let our eyes just move around a piece of paper, especially when we're looking at a graph. Okay, so just keep that in mind, all right? So always approach the graph from top down and left to right. This is easier to ignore when you're coming from a culture that might not have reading in that way. Like in Japan, for example, it goes right to left, top to down. So, in different cultures, and I respect that, it does work a little bit differently. So pay attention to top down, left to right. Excuse me. I have a frog in my throat. Must be speaking the truth. Okay. So that's what we want to do, okay? So we want to kind of look at this from top down, left to right. So we want to see that, you know, here we are looking at let me just get a bigger highlighter here. Okay, there we go. So we're looking at the title first, which is enrollment of students. Then we're looking at the three types of sports: tennis, golf, basketball. Then I'm looking at this title here, the percentage of students on the y-axis from 0 to 60%. Okay. And then I'm looking at the years. So I'm looking at the x-axis, 1995, 2000, 2005, and 2015. I'm not really concerned about the data yet that's actually in the graph because I'm not analyzing yet, right? So, but that's my movement of my eyes. So title, types of sports, y-axis, and then finally the x-axis. And if I follow that order in my introduction, I'll be just fine, okay? So here, let's take a look at the original question. I can now do my paraphrasing for the introduction, okay? Go ahead, members, and paraphrase this introduction with some detail. Then I'll grab what you write and we'll compare, okay? I'll give you a little bit of a head start here. And you can basically follow that pattern that I just showed you, okay? So, all right, and this is what I have. Let's see what you've come up with. So this is the introduction. I'm going to, well, let me just go over it first for everyone watching, and then we'll take a look at what some of our members have written as well. So instead of just saying the following line graph, as you can see here, okay, let me just grab my highlighter again. So instead of just saying the following graph, I say this line graph, okay? And then instead of saying shows, I write indicates. Percentage stays the same. And then student, and then here I wrote pupils, okay? It's another way to say students. Instead of involvement, I use the word enrollment. And instead of several sports, okay, I say in 3 sports, tennis, golf, and basketball. And then here it's in a large high school. Now I forgot to write that, so when I'm reviewing this, okay, because you should review your paragraphs, I should write that. Okay, so, and basketball in a large secondary school is another way to write high school. Okay, and then here, instead of over a certain period, I write over the course of 20 years, more specifically with intervals of 5 years, starting from 1995 and ending in 2015. So I'm giving lots more detail to the introduction than what the question provides, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, so that's what I have. Let's see what some of our members have written here. So I'm just going to grab a couple of these. Arda was, I think, the first one here, so let me just grab what Arda had. Okay. And then let me grab June here. And I'm going to grab multiple ones here, members, so I can give you some quick feedback and go over these, okay? And then here is Kelvin, so I'll grab Kelvin's. And I'll grab 3 different students next time for explanation. Okay, so it's Arda, June, and Calvin here. Okay, let me get to the parts here. All right, so we can see that they're different just at first glance. All right, and I'll give you some feedback. Okay, so this is Arda first. Arda writes, the line graph depicts the percentage of pupil participation in 3 sports, namely, Arda, no space before your semicolon, namely tennis, golf, basketball, in a huge high school over a certain period. Yeah, instead of the certain period, Arda, definitely write over a 2-decade period from 1995 to 2015. You should be specific there. For band 8, band 9, they're definitely looking for that level of expression, okay? So that's the only difference there, Arda. Otherwise, you're in the right. You know, you're using correct grammar and you have good information. You just need a little bit more, okay? All right. And then here we have June. June writes, this line graph presents the proportions of pupils in a big secondary school participating in 3 different sporting activities, namely golf, basketball. You don't need this first comma, June, okay? So activities, namely, and then after namely, okay, put the comma. Golf, basketball, and tennis from 1995 to 2015. The y-axis indicates the percentage of the high school students from 0 to 60%. With the interval of 10%. Yeah, I would do that a little bit differently, June. So I would write the y-axis indicates the percentage of the high school students' enrollment in either of these activities or either of these athletics. From 0 to 60 with intervals with the interval of 10% is okay. Yeah, with the interval of 10%. All right. So good. Then it's better. Then it's so this part's a little bit clearer now, June. That it's not students' percentage; it's the percentage of enrollment. Okay, it's a little bit clearer. Okay. All right, and then we have Calvin here. Always capitalize the start. Calvin, the illustrated line graph depicts. I wouldn't write the word illustrated, Calvin. I don't think it's necessary. It's a little bit too colorful for this kind of a graph. So the line graph depicts the changes of students' participation in 3 sports, tennis, golf, and basketball, in a big high school is 2 words, over the course of 2 decades with an interval of 5 years, period. Very nice writing. I really like how you put the word changes, because that's really what a line graph does, is it shows change over time. Okay, so very nice. All right, Calvin, well done. Okay, so those are 3 other ways to write the introduction. Okay, very good. All right, so now comes the overview. All right, and in the overview, you're really looking at the main feature, like what can we see right away? Okay, what's the most prevalent when we look at the graph? Okay, so here we go. I think I just took the actual question itself. So let me take the introduction, and I'm going to just put the introduction down below here. Okay, and now I can continue with my overview. All right, okay, and again, I'll be looking for some different students. So Nuthan, Baljit, Koa, Jyoti, Rashika, I see Chandra, I see that you have writing, which is great for the introduction. Keep going for the overview. I'm going to grab some of your phrases to give you some feedback here. So here we go. Overview. What do we see? Students, what do we see when we look at this? When we look at these lines, so right now specifically, I'm looking at these lines here. Okay, and I can definitely see something interesting when I look at these lines. There's something immediate that I notice, and I think those are absolutely the right kind of ways to start identifying the overview. And the overview is really important because the overview will set the stage. It will create the structure for the rest of the essay. It's like your thesis statement, if you will. Okay, so your overview in task 1, there isn't, I mean, in writing, technically, in university, we don't really use the term overview. I think that's more of like a term that we would use in a business meeting or in a presentation. You wouldn't technically use that term in literature, in writing. Your English literature professor would just say that's your thesis. It's not your overview. It's type of overview, but you would correctly call it your thesis statement because it would identify the body paragraph or body paragraphs of your essay. Okay, so let's see what you've come up with. So Kyber says, I can see that all 3 lines are different. Are they though, Kyber? Are they all different? I don't know, Kyber. I don't think I agree with you fully on that one. They're somewhat different, but they're not completely different. Okay. Chandra says different trends of 3 categories. Kyber says, I mean, the enrollment of each sport varies from each other. Yeah, that's true. But I do think that there's one other point that we really kind of noticed there. June says, overall, the popularity of these ball games shows significantly different trends among students over the course of the 2 decades. Basketball more popular, tennis less favored. Yeah, I agree. I think there's still a kind of an interesting, there's still some more interesting information that we can see. Okay, let's see if you agree with me. I'm going to verbalize this a bit more. Okay, Nuthan says, when we analyze the line graphs, we see the depression of tennis activities more than other sports. Yeah, Nuthan, I think you're kind of on the right track here. All right, So when you're thinking about this, think decrease, increase, and similarity. Okay, so excuse me, this is another tip for you here. Okay, let me think about where to stick this. Okay, well, you know what? Let's do it right here. Okay, so what can you see as main patterns? Okay, think. So when you're looking at this, think increase, decrease, similarity, and difference. Okay, so don't just think about differences, think about similarities. Take a look at this, students. So I would say that it's interesting. Here we can see that really tennis, okay, with the blue line, is really decreasing over the course of this period. So we can see that tennis is kind of on this downward path. It's an overall decreasing trend or decreasing popularity in this high school, right? I think everybody agrees with that. Okay, and the other two lines follow somewhat of a similar pattern. Okay, so if we look at golf, it has more or less an increasing pattern for most of the period with a slight decrease at the end. And then with basketball, we also have an increasing pattern with kind of this flattening at the end. So these two are almost parallel. Okay, they're not quite, but they are somewhat similar, right? So everybody kind of visually sees that now that I've showed you that. Okay, so we've got a very distinct decrease of tennis popularity. We've got a somewhat similar pattern for golf and basketball, with a more significant increase for basketball. Okay, so hopefully everybody sees that now, and that will create a good overview, which will lead to a good body paragraph. Okay. Yeah, so June says, rather than saying they're parallel, I would say the gap's narrow. Yeah, I wouldn't say parallel, June. Definitely they're not parallel, but they're similar. I would say it's a similar pattern. Okay, so instead of saying the gap is narrowing, I would say it's a similar pattern. But if you say the gap is narrowing, then that could work as well, June. Okay. All right, so now we're looking for the overview. I'm going to write it, you write it, and again, we'll be looking for some other members here, but that doesn't mean, June, Arda, and Calvin, that you shouldn't be writing, and I see that you are writing. Yeah, Carolina noticed that we have a new member who just joined, Oliver. Welcome, Oliver. Get right in there, okay? All right, so let's do this. Let's get into the overview. Okay, so at first glance, it is clear that, is it tennis? Yeah. That tennis decreases the most throughout this period, while golf and basketball show similar patterns, with basketball gaining the most popularity over the two-decade over the two given decades. trying to avoid writing period again. Okay. All right, and notice how I haven't written like tennis is the most popular, becomes the least popular. I can do that in the body paragraph. So here I need to kind of decide what level of detail I want to put into my overview. And I don't, I start with tennis. So that means that in my body paragraph, I'm going to start with tennis as well. And then I go to golf and then basketball. So that shows the reader that, okay, my body paragraph, my analyses will follow this pattern, okay? So body follows the same pattern, okay? So follows the same order as the overview, okay? So EX, tennis first, golf second, basketball third, right? Okay. All right, so let's see what we have here. So I'm going to grab a couple of different students' writing for the overview. And I see that I have an overview from Baljit. So let's grab Baljit here. Okay, and then Baljit, I'll take a look at this. And Khyber, I see that you have written your overview as well. Very good. Let me just grab that before it runs away. Okay. So there's Baljit and Khyber. Like I said, students, I'm going to grab different students at different times. Let's see. Has Rashika or anybody else written their overview? I don't see it yet. Okay. Oliver. I have Oliver here as well, our new member. So let's take Oliver. All right. Okay, so here we have three, Baljit, Khyber, and Oliver. Okay, let me give you some feedback on this. So, just change the size. There we go. So this first one is with from Baljit. So Baljit writes, overall, the enrollment of pupils in golf faced a gradual fluctuation. However, basketball recorded for increment. So, okay, Baljit, my first question would be, are you planning to start your body paragraph with golf? Okay, because I'm your reader and the first overview piece of information you're giving me is golf. So I'm like, okay, golf seems to be like our start point, okay? And then you go to basketball, and then you go to tennis. So that means that the structure of your body paragraph will follow this trend. I wouldn't recommend it. I think you're jumping around. You're looking at the line that's in the middle first, and then you're looking at the line that's at the bottom, and then you're looking at the line that's at the top. I think that's a very awkward pattern for your audience to follow. If you're doing a presentation, I think it could lead to confusion. So I wouldn't do that. Okay. All right. So I would change this, Baljit. I would start with tennis, then golf, then basketball. Okay. Or maybe basketball, then golf, then tennis. But I wouldn't go golf, basketball, tennis. This would be my least or my last choice of structuring the overview and the essay. Okay. All right. So you want to be careful with that. All right, it's a bit confusing when I read this. So I would, if you're sitting in my class, which you are, I would say rewrite this. Okay, I'm not being hard on you. I'm just telling you the truth. So I would rewrite this. Okay. All right, let's see what Khyber has here. So Khyber says, upon initial inspection, it becomes evident that the enrollment in tennis is decreasing over the 20 years, while basketball and golf indicate similar patterns. I would finish that, Khyber. I think you're on the right track. I would finish that with similar patterns of increase. Okay, and they do. They do have similar patterns of increase. Yeah. Slight variations, but you can describe those. So this is good. Okay, so here I would just write on your piece of paper, Khyber, which here I will do on the screen. Good. Just make sure to complete your ideas. Okay, so that's what I would tell you to do, Khyber. right? And just to get that extra point, right? We want the audience to focus on that decrease, increase difference, okay? All right, all right, you said, yes, sir, completed. Okay, do you mean you completed it in the chat? No? Okay. All right. I thought you meant you completed it in the chat, but I don't see it there, Kyber. Okay, so let's check out this one from Oliver. Okay. All right. So Oliver writes, although the popularity of tennis has decreased over the years, however, golf and basketball have picked up. Yeah, picked up what? This is incomplete. And it is good to use a leading expression, Oliver. The people at IELTS really like it. So at first glance, or overall, you can even say overall, although the popularity of tennis has decreased over the years. Now, here, don't use however, okay? So be careful with your double contrast or double negative, okay? So Oliver, I would really, so don't use but with although, and avoid using although and however together, because two negatives make a positive. It's awkward, okay? So do not use double negatives, okay? So careful with that there. Okay, I would definitely write that on your paper. So overall, although the popularity of tennis has decreased over the years, so I would take this out, okay? There. Golf and basketball have picked up interest, okay? And finish that sentence, okay? Then you're okay. It's a fairly simple overview, but it works, okay? As long as you have those components and you don't have that double negative, all right? Okay, students, and with that, I'm going to pick up a bit of speed in the lesson as well. So now, we look at our points of analyses, okay? All right, so first, I'm going to start with tennis because that's what I started with in my overview. Okay, so my first point of comparison is going to be here with tennis. Okay, and I'm going to discuss this decrease in popularity until 2010. Okay, so this is still my point 1. And then finish here, point 2, with this kind of flattening. Well, that one's above my head. Okay, let me go up a little bit with this, like that. Okay, there we go. All right. So again, so this is going to be my point 1 here. Okay, you can see the graph a little bit clearer now. So this blue line is tennis. So this is going to be my point 1. Okay. This is going to be my point 2 here, that finish. Okay, then I went with golf next, so I'm going to discuss this as my point 3, point 4, okay, and then basketball, point 5, and point 6. Now, you know, these aren't completely separated, but they're, you know, you kind of get the idea, okay? So that makes the most sense. And of course, when I'm discussing point 3, I'm going to indicate this overlap or this surpassing or superseding of popularity of tennis in around 2003. That's down here. And then again in around 2007, where basically basketball also surpasses popularity of tennis. So I'm going to indicate that in my point 5. Okay. All right, so point one, 50%, 1995, tennis. To 2010, 15% tennis. And then all the way to 2015, staying at 15%. Let's do this. So let's write. Okay. So here I have my introduction. Here I have my overview. Now I write my body. Okay. And here comes the body paragraph. All right. So tennis is the most popular sport in 1995 at this school, with half of the student body participating in this activity. Nevertheless, and there is no like amount of sentences or like how many sentences should I write. And don't worry about how many sentences you're writing. Worry about getting the information down on paper. Okay. So nevertheless, the popularity of tennis rapidly decreases over the course of the next 15 years. And drops to just 15% enrollment. And here I can do a semicolon. This proportion flattens and maintains constant until 2015. Okay. So that's it there. And that's my 1 and 2. Okay. Now, you've probably noticed I've picked up speed because analysis, you can all practice this as much as you want. Copy what I write or write it in different ways. But I am looking to see who's writing. Okay. So I can see here, June writes, in 1995, tennis was the most popular sport, with half of the high school students enrolled in this activity, remarkably more than golf and basketball at about 1/3 and 1/20 respectively. Good, so you're doing a comparison there. Okay, nice, June. Nice comparison. Arda writes, in further details, tennis loses its popularity by roughly 35%. 50 to 15% between 1995 and 2010, and it stays stable between 2010 and 2015. It's not bad, Arda. It's a little bit of an awkward way to express it. So when you're interpreting data, Arda, always try to interpret it in the most human language possible. Like it stays... or half the school is enrolled, and then it's just over 1/10 of the school. So try to be more human in language, okay? Kofum says, by contrast, tennis, which was the most popular in 2010, accounted for 50%, plummeted down to 15%. It wasn't the most popular in 2010, Kofum, so be careful with your information. It was the most popular in 1995. Okay. Again, students, the graph, it's here. Try to keep it in your head. Okay. So here you have 1995 to 2015. Okay. All right, but keep up the writing, all right? Make sure you're checking not just your English, but you're also checking your information. So the second one that I'm writing on here is, of course, golf. So golf is here, and I'm writing about this pattern, and I'm noting this situation where golf becomes more popular than tennis in around 2003, okay? And notice it's 30%, so it's just over 1/3, okay? All right, here we go. So let's do this. So golf is the second most favored ball game at this school, with a third of the students enrolling in this activity in 1995. Following this year, there is gradual increase in participation, and it supersedes tennis, or I should say surpasses tennis in popularity around it was 2003, I think. Yeah, around 2003. Around 2003, becoming the most popular sport at this institution for the remainder of the period. Okay. And if you want, you can talk about the slight decrease from 2010 if you want. If not, if you're running out of time, kind of like I am in this class, then I would jump to basketball. Okay. So I would do basketball first, and then if I realize, okay, I've got more time at the end, then I would say, nevertheless, there is a slight decrease in popularity in the last 5 years. Okay, so only if I have time. Interestingly, there is, or notably, instead of interestingly, we don't really want to sound opinionated in Task 1 students. That's why I took out the word interestingly and replaced it with notably. There is a slight decrease in enrollment in the last 5 years indicated. Okay, so I'm putting that in brackets because I would only add that if I have time. Okay. And then the last one. So although basketball is the least popular sport at this school in 1995, with just 5% enrollment, it is the fastest gaining popularity. That's an awkward way to say it. It gains the most popularity over the next 20 years, surpassing tennis in 2012, and gaining 25%, which is a quarter, right? So surpassing tennis in 2012 and gaining and having, because I've said gaining just above there, having a quarter of students enrolled by the end of the period. Okay, so that's what I would do for that. And then now I write a summary. Okay, and my summary would look like this. So I wouldn't write summary. I'm just doing this for you. Okay, summaries are important for Band 9 and Band 8. And don't worry, Nutan, Prabhasha, I'm still looking at the chat as well out of the corner of my eye. So I do take note of who is still writing, and I'm going to reflect on it in just a moment. Okay. So summary, important for Band 8, Band 9. Okay. Keep that in mind. And university. Okay, definitely. Little smiley face there for you. Okay, so in summary, it is clear from this graph that with the passing of time, different sports, or these different sports, gain or lose popularity among the students, right? So that's what we can see. And it's a simple summary. It's just one line, but it's very valuable for your reader. So your reader goes, oh yeah, okay, that's kind of what we can see from looking at these lines, is that, you know, over the passing of time, some sports become more popular, some sports become less popular, and there's definitely a significant amount of change in this popularity. Okay. All right, so let's see what some students have written here. All right, Nutan writes, when we observe the line graph relating to the sports activities in the higher secondary school, the line indicates the percentage variation of sports activities from 1995 to 2010 with intervals of 5 years. Tennis in 1995 has the higher percentage of 50%, when compared to golf and basketball in participating. Nuthan, I think you're getting into your analysis in your overview. Be careful about that. So your overview should be simpler. It should just introduce the main trends. You shouldn't be identifying numbers in your overview like 50%. Okay. Your introduction's good, but definitely work on having a distinct overview and body paragraph. Otherwise, you're going to get into repetition, confusion, so avoid that. Okay. All right, Kyber starts by saying tennis was the most popular in 1995 at this school, as half of the learners enrolled in this activity. Nevertheless, the popularity of this sport gradually decreased over the next 15 years. Yeah, very good. Kyber, that's some nice writing. Okay, good grammar. Kyber, your grammar has really improved. Thumbs up. Well done. All right. It's a good start. Yeah, it's very similar to mine, but still different. So solid. Okay. All right, Preeti, I don't, members, can you see, like, is anybody, if you're on mobile, can you see the chat when I'm just looking at it directly in the chat instead of copy pasting? Because then I can give more feedback. So can everybody see the chat? Just let me know about that, because I'm curious, like, if you're on mobile, can you actually see what people write in the chat, or is it too tiny? And I don't actually know how many of you are watching this on mobile because it doesn't give me that data. Preeti says, yes, I can see it, sir. And Preeti, I'm guessing you're using mobile, like you're using a phone, right? Because if you can see it clearly on your phone. Okay, Mal says, I'm on mobile and nope, I don't see much. Okay, so it's probably a little bit too tiny. If you're on a computer, you'll definitely see it. Yeah, and I can't really make it bigger because then it starts to get really messy on the screen. Like, you can't make the chat bigger as far as I know. So, but anyway, Preeti's using mobile. Maybe Preeti, your mobile's a lot bigger than Mal's mobile. I don't know. Okay, anyway, some good writing, students. Let's see. Rashika says, in 1995, a third of the students enrolled for golf. This proportion slightly increased to 40%. You need the 2 there, Rashika, surpassing tennis in 2003. then, not after, but then decreasing to 32% at the end of the period. I wouldn't say course, period, Rashika. Okay, good work, everyone. Keep it up. Finish the essay. All right, you have an idea. I gave you some templates to work with. So finish the essay. Finish the essay. Students, we got speaking part 1 coming up next, okay? And we'll be taking some volunteers as well. So make sure that you hang around. I'll be back in 30 minutes. And be sure to check out aehelp.com. Let's do a pink here. aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. Those websites, they look like this. This is the academic IELTS here. You can click this big red button to join the premium package. It's a one-time payment, lifetime access. And for academic IELTS, you can click that big red button. We're going to actually use the course, this aehelp.com, in the next class to click that button to speak to some of our students. Okay, so thank you so much, members, for your support and your participation. I hope to see you in the next class. Okay, thank you, Carolina, for moderating. See, I'm looking at all of what you're saying. You can kind of see that more in these classes. Okay, so that's it for now. Finish the essay. Okay, keep up the good work. And I will definitely be back in, well, less than half an hour now, in 28 minutes, with speaking part 1. And everybody will be able to join the chat for speaking part 1, and many of you will actually be able to talk to me in the real world verbally. You can hear me, you can listen to me, and I can hear you. So I will see you shortly. Take care, everyone, and I'll be back soon. I'm Adrian, signing out from Victoria for now. Bye.